Welcome to this course Issues in Bioethics, Module 1, Unit 1. So, this course tries to introduce the discipline bioethics by highlighting some of the very important problems or issues that figure in. There is a slight focus on the historical and conceptual aspects, and this lecture will focus the following topics. It tries to give an overview of bioethics and the modern context of bioethics. Of course, the historical and other aspects we will be dealing more elaborately in a later lecture. In this unit, we will try to see how the modern context of bioethics is unique compared to several other aspects. And then in this context, the institutionalization of medicine is a very important concept or a very important problem. And then medicine in the changing world is something which we are trying to map in this lecture. And again we try to conclude by seeing how from codes to regulations and to law bioethics is gradually progressing. So, what is bioethics? So, we will see that bioethics literally means the ethics of life, but this course will be primarily dealing with ethical issues which are relevant in biomedical ethics, or rather medical ethics, the practice of medicine, as well as usage of certain technologies assisting the science of medicine or in the practice of the science of medicine. And then the concern in this course is as I mentioned, medicine and biomedical sciences, and ethics pertaining to the practice of medicine have a very long history, because we can see that even ancient India, which we will be outlining in the next lecture, the science of medicine, which is called Ayurveda. Ayurveda comes up with a very strong ethical code or ethical prescriptions, and then in Greece, ancient Greece and China and many other civilizations, we can see that ethics, or rather the practice of medicine, is assisted by a very strong ethics or prescriptions on ethics. So, in that sense it has a very long history. But modern bioethics is quite unique, because modern bioethics primarily deals with the ethical codes or ethical norms and standards which have to be followed by the practice of modern medicine. And modern medicine in that way is quite unique compared to the ancient medicine or vis-a-vis Ayurveda or any other traditional practice of medicine. Modern medicine has certain very important features which distinguish it from other forms of medical practice or healing practices, that it uses technology a lot, particularly in today's world it uses technology a lot, and also it is a science, it is a pure science, it is based on the experimental method that is developed by natural sciences. So, this wedding with science has happened somewhere around 18th century. Close wedding with science, transformation of healing practices into a science of medicine happened after enlightenment. So, naturally the ethical issues which modern medicine encounter are also going to be very different from the kind of ethical issues or ethical problems which ancient practitioners ever have envisaged. And as I mentioned, medicine appears as an extremely complex phenomena in today's world. We know that it is part of a complex life world. There is the society, the modern society itself is highly complex, it is highly institutionalized, and it is also divided into different functional spheres which are more or less autonomous. So, in that context, medicine has become an autonomous institution to some extent, but at the same time we all know that every society, every modern society particularly, needs the help of modern medicine. See, for instance, a society in India, the Indian society almost 50 years back could have done without modern medicine probably, but today's modern India cannot even think of doing without modern medicine. We need the kind of assistance of modern medicine, and the hospitals and the super speciality hospitals and all the technological paraphernalia that assist modern medicine. At the same time, parallel to this, medicine has become a part of an industry, a very strong industry, a business with very strong profit. When you are industrializing, naturally the primary concern will be profit maximization. So, medicine has also become an industry in today's world, and medical industries connecting various aspects of medicine, not just clinical aspect of it, the technological, the pathological, and various other the diagnostic aspects of medicine. Everything together constitute a highly complex web of activities which is highly technologized, highly sophisticated. And this kind of an institution needs the support of huge money, and this money can come only from private parties, private industries. So, there is a very strong industrial interest that dominate in today's medicine, in the practice of contemporary medicine. And there is this term medicalization, which sociologists have started using to highlight, for example, sometimes a little hyperactive kids. This kind of kids are were quite common, and many of our friends, I mean, if you remember, during our childhood were quite active, and this were never treated or never considered as a medical problem. But today parents are really worried about the activity, the overactivity of their kids, and this hyperactivism or hyperactivity, they doubt hyperactivity, and they approach the doctors, and many doctors are now treating such kids for hyperactivism. It has become a medical condition. It was probably not a medical condition some time back. So, now almost those common phenomenon have become, common emotions and traits have now turned into treatable conditions. And then again there is another very alarming tendency, that there is overuse and over reliance on technology. For everything, technology is relied upon. 20 years back, if you go to a doctor, most of the diagnosis is done within his consultation room by just touching, feeling your pulse, or with the stethoscope. Most of the things were done by the doctor. And one very important component of medical diagnosis was the conversation between the doctor and the patient. The doctors used to spend a lot of time with their patients during those days, but now in a changing world, doctors have no time, or rather they immediately use technology, the help of technology, and for everything there is a diagnostic test today, and there is a in one sense, we can critically see this phenomenon as an overusage and over reliance on technology. So, in that way, the modern context of bioethics is an extremely complex social context, which definitely redefines the role of physicians and other healthcare professionals as well as patients. Because we all know that sometime back, the kind of unique relationship that existed between physicians and patients. Physicians were almost treated as gods, and patients had ultimate faith on them. There was absolute trust on their physicians, and whatever physicians said, patients trusted them, and patients used to follow that. But now things are changing. Now there is a lack of trust. There is a fall in the level of trust that exists, and also the role physicians take in today's healthcare scenario has drastically changed from what it was earlier. The relationship between physicians and patients have also undergone changes, because earlier there used to be this concept of family physicians. The family physician, of course, knows in and out about their patients, their names, their family background, their health conditions, almost everything about the patient the physicians used to know. So, the relationship was not just professional, it was also sort of personal. But in today's world, the patients are primarily related to the hospitals, not to the physicians, but the hospitals, and physicians work in the hospitals. So, hospital, or that context of the hospital, functions as a mediator which connects the physicians with the patients, and the relationship is almost more or less impersonal relationship. This context also raises certain ethical issues. And then there is this whole talk about professional autonomy, because every professional community is demanding that they should be given autonomy. So, doctors or physicians or healthcare professionals demand that they should enjoy autonomy, only then they would be able to deliver their services most effectively and efficiently. This demand for autonomy also raises certain issues, because once they have become autonomous, they have become less answerable to the society. Okay. So, in that way every professional society demands a kind of autonomy, a kind of freedom or independence granted by the society. Then the whole society would become what? Scattered units, not internally interconnected, but some sort of connection that exists, which is absolutely professional, which is absolutely artificial. So, this also creates this model of society which we are developing in today's world is also creating a lot of issues, and naturally the role of physician, the role of healthcare workers also in this context become problematic. All these things ultimately point to another very important and crucial phenomenon, which can be called as a fragmentation of modern life. As I already mentioned, modern society is not one single unit. Society no more exists as a one single unit. Society is now a collection of different functional spheres. There is business, there is education, there is bureaucracy, there is judiciary, and there are many other units that makes up a society. And each sphere is relatively autonomous. So, in what way they are interconnected? What makes them connected with each other? That is a question, because it is inevitable that these different units are interconnected, only then they can function as one single unit, at least functionally. So, you need some sort of a interrelationship, and this fragmentation creates a huge problem. And it is in this context modern societies try to overcome the problems and the crises that arise out of this fragmentation through laws, through the implementation of laws and certain policies. But laws definitely have their own limitations. On many occasions, on many circumstances, you cannot apply a law, or rather the application of law will not be really fruitful. So, what is more important then becomes ethics, the question of responsibility, the question of obligation, duty, all these aspects become important, and the concept of law fails to encompass these aspects which are very important for a society to function. So, it is in this context ethics makes a comeback. So, we have to talk about ethics. This is another very interesting phenomenon of our modern context, of our modern life, that patients have to be protected from coercion. There are several factors that will have certain very adverse impact on the patient's interest. For example, in a typical clinical context, where medical decisions have to be made, the patient goes to a physician and the physician suggests a certain treatment method. Who takes the decision? The physician is suggesting two alternatives. Either you can adopt this, either you can go for a surgery, or you can take medicines and try to solve the problem. But who takes the ultimate decision? Whether it is the patient or the physician, that is the question. And on many such occasions, even today in our society, we will find that the physicians play a very important role, a key role rather, because often patients tell the physician that, sir, you take the decision for us, we trust you. But then again, if anything happens, then they put all the blame on the physician. So, this creates a lot of tension in modern life. And another problem happens when the patient's relatives play a key role in the process. When they take decisions for the patient, that again might be against the interest of the patient. There are many such cases which we encounter today in today's world. So, all these issues figure in the context of the modern practice of medicine in our contemporary society. And there are certain very important rights of patients. Patients have certain rights which is blatantly violated almost on a day-to-day basis. From a very simple situation, like you go to a hospital and the doctor gives you or suggests you certain medicines, the doctor does not tell you for what. There is a responsibility of the doctor or the pharmacist to tell you that how this medicine is going to work and what are the side effects of this medicine. Again, in many hospitals this happen, private clinics it happen that the prescriptions are not given to the patient. So, this is again against the right of the patients, because the patients are paying for the services they receive, they are in a technical sense they are consumers. So, they have certain rights which are granted by the court of law, by the constitution. So, these rights are blatantly violated on many occasions in our society. And it is in this context we come across the problems related to the institutionalization of medical ethics, which we have already seen. We have to actually approach ethics from an institutional context, because the focus is more from patient, the context of a patient physician relationship, because that is not the primary relationship that we are concerned with in today's world, the patient physician one-to-one relationship. Of course, such relationships even today happen, but that is not the primary context in which medical ethics or biomedical ethics becomes relevant or problematized in today's world. Because we have something like for the focus is more on the ethical issues in the context of institutions than in relations among individuals. This happens everywhere, not just in medicine, but it happens everywhere, even in business or education or everywhere this happens in modern societies. See, there is rampant institutionalization of medical profession. We have already mentioned this. There are hospitals, super speciality hospitals, and patients are related to the physicians through the hospitals. So, the mediation has become inevitable, and in modern society social existence is more than a relation between individuals or families. Simple ethical principles used for regulating individuals' lives are inadequate. So, you need certain codes to tackle the institutionals. So, the institutionalization of ethics become important, and then there is this actually resulted in a shift of emphasis from what we can call as a social trustee professionalism to expert professionalism. What is meant by social trustee professionalism is professionals alone or in small groups serve their patients or clients in accord with a public spirited goal. And on the other hand, today what we have is something can be called as expert professionalism, where professionals serve in organizations that value mainly their expertise and expect them to act in accord with the organization's goals, which are often determined by the market and economic pressure. So, the moment institutions come into picture, there is what is relevant is expert professionalism rather than social trustee professionalism, which is more personal. Now, it has become so impersonal, and medicine also we can see has become part of an industry, where primary concern will be obviously profit maximization. So, we will try to situate or contextualize medicine in a changing world. Medicine as a science and industry, because traditionally all of us know that most of the societies in the world we had our own healing practices, our own healing systems, and most of these healing systems were not purely scientific. They were based on experiences people have. Unique feature of it that it has become a complex science and also has become part of an industry. And then there is this whole process of globalization of healthcare. There are certain global standards that are evolving in healthcare industry, and both from the industrial, from the technological perspective, as well as from the perspective of certain practices that exist in the industry. Professional practices are shaped and designed in a certain manner in order to fit the global requirement. And again, naturally the ethical concerns have also right now a global dimension. So, the kind of bioethical principle we are talking about today we will be actually discussing some of these principles in the following lectures. Say for example, something like autonomy and the principalist approach adopted by Tom Beauchamp and others, where autonomy plays a key role. And this concept of autonomy is actually rooted in a concept of person, in a concept of individual person that emerged during somewhere in 18th century in post Enlightenment Europe. And many of us wonder that what does this concept of autonomy have to do with the Indian individuals, Indians here. For example, in India still the family plays a very important role in decision making and also almost everywhere. You know, even today most of the Indians see them as part of a unit that is constituted by other family members. Of course, the nature of family, the concept of family, everything is undergoing changes, no doubt about it, but still there is a way in which this is different from the atomistic conception of individual, which has led to the notion of autonomy and others. And as I already mentioned, the technologization of healthcare is one important feature, the increasing need for research. This is another very important aspect of medical practice in today's world, which we will be discussing as part of this course, because research constitutes a very important part of the practice of medicine. And research needs, clinical research needs people who are ready to to come forward as subjects. And there are several other issues involved in this context. So, they have much lesser role in many countries. In India still we have government plays a very important role in the practice of medicine, because we have government hospitals where practically every treatment is free, and there are many good government hospitals in our country, no doubt about that. But at the same time, if you try to understand where the government facilities stand vis-a-vis the quality which private industry, private medical industry can offer, we are nowhere near to that. The sophisticated machineries which private medical healthcare industries can provide, governments cannot. But still the government has a very important role to play in this context, because first of all the government will have to take care of the interest of the citizen, and health is one of such components where the interests of the citizen are so intimately interwoven. So, governments still have to play a key role. Now, another important issues are issues related to the concept of justice, affordability, accessibility of healthcare. Though I mentioned that in India we have government hospitals where treatment is offered free of cost, still many of us find it difficult to afford the kind of treatment which is accessible to them. Accessibility is a major problem, because there may not be a nearby good government hospital. So, they will have to walk miles and miles to go to the nearby government hospitals to get free treatment. So, naturally they will have to rely on the nearest private clinic, where they will have to pay money from their own pocket, and there are many such issues. Healthcare and the question of justice come into picture in this context. And again, the changes in the world and the changes in medicine have implications on value. So, there is a way in which the practice of medicine has reverse influence on social values, because the way in which medicine is practiced will affect the value system a society has. Technologies make possible many things which were unthinkable earlier. Say for example, today by using certain technological devices, we can prolong lives of people. Many sophisticated technological procedures are available today. Plastic surgery is another very important area where it has done revolutions to the lives of people. So, all these technologies have introduced certain situations in the society where some of the traditional values are challenged. And this situation in one sense has very strongly redefined the roles of patients, physicians and family members in the context. It is no longer possible for us to conceive the kind of relationship that existed between the different stakeholders in the same way as it existed 50 years or 25 years back. And religious and traditional values are very strongly challenged. The modern context has increasingly started introducing dilemmas like selective reproduction, sex selection, family sex balancing. All these are problems which modern societies might encounter. What is wrong if a couple decide to have sex balancing in their family? If suppose a family already they have a son and they would like to have a daughter, what is wrong if they decide to have a daughter? With the help of technology they can choose, they can make that choice, they can implement it. What is wrong? Why should the government prevent this from happening? Again, this will also have certain implications on the ideas of family as we have traditionally inherited. Then questions like life and death, quality of life, the problems raised by euthanasia, which has got two aspects, the passive euthanasia and the active euthanasia, where the physicians actually come forward and help the patient to end their life. So, all these have introduced certain complex ethical issues. Surrogacy is another very important procedure which many people follow in today's world, and this has questioned the very conception of parenthood. Who is a parent? There is a biological father, there is a mother and there is a surrogate mother. So, the child virtually has two mothers, the actual mother and the surrogate mother. The surrogate mother has carried the baby for more than 9 months. Can you deny her motherhood? So, all such questions comes for our analysis in this context. And do couple from same sex marriages constitute a family? That is again a very interesting issue which in today's world we find extremely problematic. And are surrogate mother part of family? I have already mentioned this. Would a single parent and her cloned offspring constitute a family? Now, science makes this possible. A person can clone his or her offspring. So, is it possible? Would they constitute a family? The meaning of life and death, everything keep changing in today's world. The role of family and physicians also changes. And then traditionally we hold that the physician's primarily duty is to save life, but now there is this concept of active euthanasia, where the physician helps the patient to end their life, or rather physician assisted suicides. Is it ethically all right for physicians to do this? They are traditionally expected to save life, not to take life. Then in many countries physicians participate in torture, in torturing the prisoners and other people. So, can you justify this? On what basis can you justify this? And then disclosure of medical error is another very important and a serious domain which modern medicine is concerned with. What would be the implications of this? Whether hospitals or individual professionals come forward to do this. And sale of human organs, this is another very tricky area, very fishy area rather, because on the one hand surrogacy is permitted in a country, but sale of human organs are not permitted. So, surrogacy can be technically termed as renting the body parts, but if renting is possible, what is wrong with selling? So, there are certain technical ethical issues. I mean logically if this is possible, this also should be possible, but this raises certain ethical questions which the other one is not raising. All such of complex issues figure in, and public health ethics. So, what we have seen is that the traditional ethics, traditional bioethics largely relied upon the concept of codes for physicians. So, ethical code of physicians, we will be discussing a little bit of this in the next lecture. Emphasizing the responsibility of physician. There is this famous Hippocratic oath, but they are mostly self-regulating in nature. The oath was taken by the physicians and they have this responsibility to follow that, but there is no concept of external regulation. As far as the oaths or codes are concerned, they are meant for internal regulation or self-regulation. But now gradually with this concept of internal regulation or self-regulation alone, modern society cannot function. There should be very strong external regulations as well. So, this is what the oath fails to incorporate many new ideals that are held dear to medical practice, such as societal or legal responsibilities, research ethics, and accountability in collaborative patient care models. So, we need to go beyond the oath. So, to regulations and then finally to very strong laws. So, we need to come up with legal frameworks to protect the interest, and so it is in this context the important context can be outlined, which will be discussed in detail as part of this course. We will see clinical medicine, where the physician patient relationship is once again examined with by highlighting certain important conceptual riddles. Then the context of research is examined, because one interesting context is the development of new drugs and the pharmaceutical industry, growing controversy and even hostility in relationship between the pharmaceutical industry and the public. So, quite often pharmaceutical industry has been criticized by many for being unethical, or rather some even would say that the most unethical, which is justifiable or not, or on what account people can criticize them, because they are after all industries and their concern should be profit maximization, but quite often they are judged with certain other parameters. So, how far that is justifiable? The technology interface, which has become inevitable in today's world, the new developments in medicine and pathology, medicalization, technologization, all these problems come into picture in this context. And finally, the politics of medicine becomes a very important concern for us from a philosophical perspective, where medicine, where we can examine how medicine has become a way in which authority, power can be executed. So, these are some of the concerns which this course is going to deal with. So, the next lecture we will address the historical evolution by highlighting some of the traditional models, and for the time being we will wind up this this class, the first unit. Thank you.